Hi, everyone, and welcome to our conversation with the director and the film subject from PANTERAS, Living Among Wild Cats. I'm so thrilled to welcome both of our special guests, Andoni and Unai Canela. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for joining us from all the way. You're in Madrid, correct?
Thank you. Great to be here. Well, a few kilometers away. We are near north of Barcelona, so near the border with France. That's where we are.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, it's so amazing to welcome you back to DocLands. You're returning with this film after we had your film Looking for the Wild, Unai's Journey, back in 2018 as part of our education program. And you guys were both here in person at the time. Unai, you were all of 12 back then, and it's really amazing to have you guys back. So just maybe to start off, for viewers who, probably didn't, or maybe unfamiliar with that film, didn't get a chance to see it, can you just explain how you got from that film and journey to this film and journey? Because it feels like there's a little bit of, kind of a direct line from one to the next.
Yes, Unai's journey with looking at the wild, it was my first experience on going with my family. Usually as a wildlife photographer, I used to go alone, and I usually go alone and spend maybe a month, 2-3 months. But after many years doing that myself, we with Mary-Chelle, we decided to try to do a special project. And that project, it was a year and a half traveling, and in each continent there was a wild animal that it was. We were working on it, and we were explaining things and living 3 months in each continent. And that the book, the stories on the magazines, and especially the film, it went very well all around the world. And when it was finished, if I tell you the truth, what I thought is to do again the work that I was doing just alone on myself. And I thought about do a story on big cats, on wild cats. And at the beginning, I didn't think that it was a good idea for Unai to come, because I knew it was going to be difficult. It was going to take a few years. I was calculating like 4 or 5 years. And I thought of doing it alone, but then talking at home with Mary-Chelle, my partner, my wife, said, Unai, you think he would like to come? And she said, for sure, he would like to come. So I thought also about not only the photographs and the book, also the movie, if possible. And then is when we thought, and I thought that it could be a good idea to do like not a second part, but something related to the first. And we asked Unai, and then we also talked to the school. So it was the possibility. It's not like the other project. It was a year and a half on a row, and he went to study at Colorado for 3 months, and in places like Australia. In this case, we were going each year around every 2-3 months. We were doing a trip of 3-4 weeks. So in between, he had to study, and he can tell. So I asked him, and he said yes, and then we start. And 5 years later, we're here.
So that's what I was wondering for you. And how did you balance that with school and managing the two experiences, all at the same? Because just being in high school is a lot on its own. This is a lot to manage.
It is. But for me, the way I see it is just since I was a very young kid, my dream was always to go on these amazing trips my dad would talk to me about. He would come and he would explain that he was just in the Arctic or taking pictures of polar bears, and I was just fascinated. So for me, the kind of deal I made with my local high school was that if I did all the exams, all the tests, the couple of weeks before I went traveling for a month or two, or just after coming, they would just let me get away with it. And that's where the motivation kind of just came, right? Because for me, it was just maybe I had to work a little bit harder, but I had that motivation to just go and experience these adventures that until that point they were just dreams, and well, especially before the first film. But as you were both saying, it was a very different kind of trip. The first film is kind of a family trip still, amongst amazing animals and landscapes, but this one was a bit more harsh, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were parts that were pretty hard
because the
temperature.
The first one, well, my mom was with us in the first one. I think that was kind of the moral compass during the first year. But once I was traveling alone with this guy who is a bit of he doesn't really need to eat. He doesn't really need to sleep. He's never tired. He's a bit of a, a machine. And that was it was quite of an experience for sure. Yes.
And how did that, I mean, were there any challenges like with your classmates, the fact that like you got to go and do these amazing things while they were still stuck in school? I love that part at the beginning in your in the animation about how you describe, like they're all just basically sitting in their at their desks and you're on this incredible adventure. Was there any challenge kind of like reintegrating every time going back to school?
Well, actually not really. And now that I think about it, I didn't really think about it at the moment, but my colleagues didn't really seem to care that much about it. The closest friends I had, of course, they were fascinated and they were always texting me when I was away. And when I would come back, they were so intrigued to know what happened. But since I always had those close friends around and I never had like this feeling of just being, apart. But now that I think about it, all the other classmates and the people who weren't really close friends didn't really seem to care much.
Oh,
They
they're
just thought
into
that-
other things.
yeah, I guess so. But if I found myself in their position and there's this kid who's missing class almost half of the year, I would kind of just ask him questions, I guess. But yeah, people didn't really seem to care much.
Well, I love that your teachers, it empowered you to do that and enabled it. Did you often, because I know you mentioned a couple of things during the course of the film of things that your teachers were asking you to do. How much of the work that or what you learned as you were going, did you incorporate into your schoolwork?
I wouldn't say too much. There was a couple of travels that I did kind of get to, do some field work, write about the things I was experiencing and then kind of hand it in. But the school would just try to make me cover the basic subjects. And I'd say I learned a lot traveling, but it wasn't really linked to the school. It was more linked to kind of my dad teaching me about animals and kind of trying to discover what I was around. But yeah, the school just gave me some a way to just pass the basic exams that didn't really try to get me involved with the different cultures and places I was traveling.
Still a pretty amazing educational experience.
Oh,
to
it
tag on
was.
to everything else, right? It's awesome.
No, I got to learn an incredible amount.
Yeah. That you couldn't possibly learn, from a textbook, obviously. So I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit. Sorry, go ahead.
I think in Panteras we are based on the wildlife and the animals and the importance of the cats, and you cannot see what's all the like great people we met and locals and also experts and people we found so many months all together. It's more than a year we've been together, so we met lots of people that they are not in the film because we are more into the landscape and the animals. But for him and for me, when you travel, that's one thing, very good thing about traveling and knowing the world. You meet some great people. So that's why we wanted to go back and come back to some of us over there, but this time we couldn't make it.
And also for me, it was my teenage years, so it was kind of building my own, my own person and getting to get to know all these kind of cultures and points of views and seeing all these problems also, not only with animals, but seeing people who have practically nothing. And that I think shaped my way of viewing the world. And I'm very thankful for that. And it's something that I kind of feel that I would have missed if I didn't live this experience.
Yeah, we spent sometimes like 3-4 weeks. We didn't even find out that the pandemic was on because we have no internet or telephone. We were just eating rice and at the moment he was vegan, so he was just eating rice and little else. And we were happy, like the people there. No communication, nothing. But that was a great experience.
It is really something.
Up at 4,000 or 5,000 meters high in the Himalayas.
Yeah, well, because it's really interesting that, the film, like you said, it feels like an incredibly isolated experience. You did obviously deliberately, not include any other humans other than yourselves. And that, so it feels like the entire time that you're away, it's basically just you in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness, with wildlife. So it's really interesting to hear that, there's this whole sort of more rich cultural dynamic that's happening behind the scenes of who you're engaging with and connecting. And I feel like that's probably a whole nother film that you could make about those experiences.
Yeah, in some places we were like even like Patagonia, places in Africa and Kalahari. We were alone sometimes for 2-3 weeks, just alone.
Wow.
Some of the times we were just with one family, like when we were in Tibet, with just one family and nobody else. And some other places we were more in contact with people. But sometimes even with just one family, being for 3 weeks and then coming back and being friends with them, like 2 years after that, just being with one family just is like
it's all you need.
so
But now we're also kind of working on a TV show with the Spanish TV network, which is kind of that part of the travel. So the movie, we kind of wanted to make it a bit more poetic and talk about the animals, talk about what's behind all those amazing nature documentaries, how you have to, you know, work to get those shots. And the TV series is going to be a bit of the engagement.
Yeah, that's one thing maybe you don't know yet. With the Spanish national network, the main Spanish television, we are doing a series of 8 different chapters on each of the big cats. And that's the reason we are going to Patagonia next Tuesday.
Is it
Monday?
Yeah, Tuesday.
We are going to Patagonia for the cougar to do more stuff. And then he comes back the day before to study, and I stay longer. So
I have to do my the high school finishing exams. I don't know what you call that in the US, but
well, we have finals, I guess is basically all we call them. Like we don't have like any one made I mean, when there's the SATs that anyway, it's similar, but
they have one before the university.
Just finishing high school.
And what are you, so along those lines, you know, like what are you hoping to, like, how much are you following in what you've been learning and doing on these trips? Or, you know, you've got so many obviously different artistic skills and talents that show up throughout the film, between, you know, your music and your drawing and, you know, and the photography. Like what are you looking ahead to do when you go to university?
Well, what I've found is that after spending so many hours just sitting on rocks and walking around nature, is that if I am still doing this, it's because I love this, right? and I found a passion in especially filming in nature. So I've kind of dived into this world, and I can only dream about just continue doing documentaries and films. I actually just we're actually still wrapping up, but I finished my first documentary as myself as a director a couple months ago, and I just kind of want to go that way. Although in college I'm going to be studying anthropology, because I kind of want to shape my movies towards that. But definitely movies and documentaries is what I expect.
Yeah, one thing in Panteras, you can see at the beginning when he's 12, 13, 14 years old, he doesn't have the chance of getting the camera and filming much. He does a few planos, shots here and there, but he doesn't do anything, 12, 13. But after 2-3 years, when he's 14, 15, 16, and now 17, well, now he gets more and more to use the camera, and he learns. And at the end, most of you see in Panteras is done half and half. Yeah. He gets the camera and I have the camera, and I tell him, do you do the open shot and I do the close up? And sometimes we change, and he films me, I film. So that's a good training for him. The last 2 years, he's doing almost the same that I do.
Yeah, well, I was wondering that too, because just, you know, to be able to, I mean, your focus obviously is on capturing those wild cats. Like that's, you know, you're there, you're tracking, that's what you're doing. But to, at the same time, you know, each of you being able to capture both the still imagery and the film imagery for everything that you are doing all at the same time, and to, you know, film each other. Like, how do you manage that whole dynamic to make sure that you are focused on what you're trying to capture, but getting the whole experience at the same time when it's just the two of you shooting?
Yes, well, that's difficult. That's not easy. Sometimes we couldn't do both, and for that reason, there's like some great images, but we just focus on the animals, and we didn't have the surroundings, so we didn't put it on the film, and we cannot put it on the series because we wanted to show both things, and that's not easy, but we knew we had to do it. I mean, if I was just going on myself just alone, it's impossible. Being two of us,
it's a bit easier, but it's still very difficult. And I think in the movie you can kind of see the evolution, because at first it's my dad and me helping him a little bit so you can see the shots. He's a photographer, so it was his second movie. Is still kind of sketchy, right? And then you get a year after that, and all of a sudden maybe 25% of the shots are done by me. So we have some dynamism, and then we move on a couple of years, and we could just kind of grew into that. We didn't really have like a blueprint on how to do it, but I guess we just kind of found our ways.
Yes.
But I think if the people who can see the movie kind of can see our evolution with the cinematography as well. I think at the end of the movie, it's much more poetic and well.
Yeah, definitely. There's that evolution of how you, and just the fluidity of the imagery as you go, that, at the beginning, there's a lot more of you kind of almost more documenting, Unai's experience of, is he going to make it these 4 years through this whole process, eating, just tuna and bread, and being freezing cold, and sort of that evolution, which is why I love, that the choice that you make for that last scene too, of, you just sort of, which kind of bookends from the beginning of like, how long are we going to wait to find something to like, that's okay. That's just part of the process.
Yes,
it's really sweet. Can you talk a little bit about how this whole experience, it affected your relationship as, together with each other?
Good question. I think at the beginning it was easier. I think that any kids, any boy, any girl of 12, 13, 14 years old, it could go, and if he's younger, even easier with 10, 11, 12, because everything is exciting. If you take and leave the hard physical part out, that it wasn't like this all the trips. But if you leave out, I think everybody will be happy, fathers and sons. But after, when you enter in the adolescence, 14, 15, then is when you
right.
Yeah,
but we didn't really have.
Well, we had a couple trips that we had. But we had the same confrontations here at home.
Right.
But over there we were alone like 24 hours a day for 3 weeks.
That's the thing, because we were together for 3-4 weeks, 24 hours a day, 7 days of the week, and maybe we had 2 confrontations. And
that's pretty good.
I used to always say, "Oh, my dad is such. He's always mad. He's always screaming." Because I would just keep in mind those couple of things. But when we kind of stopped traveling, I started thinking, I'm like, I've been living with my dad for 4 years, half time. And we barely fought. We were living together with barely any
usually
problems.
Were things like, I want to eat more. I want to eat something different at the beginning, and then that's all. Right. He loves to eat. I don't eat much. But there was like that, and then we start to get that fight like you had like any.
But the thing is, there were many situations that kind of it was easy for one to get a bit, a bit mad, because for example, when it was very cold, when we didn't get much sleep, when it was frustrating, when we didn't see animals for 2 weeks, and we were there to see, I don't know, the snow leopard, 3 weeks in, we didn't see it, and we were eating every day rice. I was vegan, so it was just rice. He was eating rice with dry meat, but it was just rice for me. and you were sleeping at minus 30 Celsius, and it was. And of course, if he tells me to, I don't know, to pass him the notebook, I'm a bit more, it's easier to get mad in those situations. But after 4 years, we're still buddies. We're still working together.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what would you say was the biggest challenge that you experienced on, overall?
Challenge. I think we had this idea at the beginning, that we wanted to explain the story without voiceover narration afterwards, explaining the story. We wanted to explain everything we were living, like life, like we were at that time, and things are happening in that moment. And to get to a documentary that you don't have explanations of everything, that sometimes we don't want to explain everything. We just want people to feel what we are, but we have to show and we have to also to communicate with, so that it was difficult to be able to always know that was going to be the way, during, at the middle, at the end, and then with the post-production and the production with Wanda, the producer, everything went very well, but we also had to fight to say, we want to explain the story like this.
Right.
There's not going to be a traditional documentary where things are explained. No, we have explained live at the moment what is going on. So we want to feel, we want to stay faithful to that story.
And you know what I think was interesting also was that the fact that we didn't know it was going to turn out right. The thing is, that was an idea we had, but there's really I've never seen a documentary with the idea that there's no like narrative. There's no narration, there's no script. So we had that idea. We wanted to. Well, it was mainly his idea, but he kind of transmitted it to me, and we wanted to do a documentary that had no script really, and there was no narration, and there was no voiceover.
That was a risk,
and it was a bit not stressing, but we were working a lot towards that, and also in the post-production, and for example,
and the music also, we wanted to have a very important part for the music, and then there his songs, and then there's also the instrumental part of Ivan Karames, the composer, but it's his songs that they were made in situ, in the place. So we wanted to get that also.
But of course, I was never a musician. You see the movie and I'm just playing the ukulele and singing pretty badly. So the risk we took that I had to write, I think it's 7 songs, and kind of create something out of that was also, it was just, we had a lot of ideas that could turn out great, but it could also all just go down the drain. And that was a bit of a challenge because we kept working on it, and it was a big project. It was 4 years. Then more musicians came into place, editors, and a lot of time and a lot of sweat. So yeah, that was a challenge. More than the gold.
More than the gold and more than the rice.
And more than finding the animals and like going 3 times to the Himalayas and the Tibet because it was difficult. The Panteras or the links. That was fun to come back. It was hard not to. Let's come back. Okay, let's go.
There is a point always where you're like, oh, it's starting to get a bit hard when you're in the Himalayas. But the moment you step in the airport, it's like, damn, I want to go back. It's like that.
Well, and it's so interesting. The music is really such an important part of it. It's amazing. I mean, I didn't realize that you had written all those songs too. I mean, it makes sense because they did all, come right out. I mean, the way that you incorporated into the film too, you see how they've come right out of the experiences. But they felt it was just a different tone and style of music than you normally get in that kind of a nature documentary too. So it just totally changed the whole dynamic and felt very much, about your experience. And yeah, I just thought it was remarkable. And I felt the same way about, I'm curious about your choice. You were saying that you didn't want to have any narration, but how you sort of set up the beginning with Unai with your drawings and then, animating that and kind of using that initial voiceover kind of to lead us in. Can you talk about that process and decision?
That part is because, of course, because there was not going to be any narration afterwards, we wanted a couple minutes so the viewer would know who he is, who I am, and just to tell the background that I'm a photographer, he's my son, and we're going to do this for 4 or 5 years. So we had that 2 minutes, and then we wanted to get this out of the real movie of the story. And that's the reason why we have this animation, because that was like, como dirías, when you start the book, there's a preface. I don't know in English.
I don't know.
Like a presentation.
A preface, yeah, that's
and then you start. So that's what the reason. And then we had the book or his drawings. So it was great to get that animated of his drawing and have this preview explaining in 2 minutes what was going to be. The rest of the almost an hour and a half or 90 minutes, and then we were free. We didn't need to explain anything else. So
I think we kind of wanted to get away with doing whatever we wanted to do in the film. So if we wanted to put 10 minutes of absolute silence with no voices whatsoever, we needed kind of an excuse. So that was a first, what is it, 3 minutes of kind of explaining what's going to be going on. And then we kind of can get away with 10 minutes of absolute silence, which is
but but like the use of the animation and your drawings, and then you see those drawings referenced, and you see them happening as you're creating them throughout. Like it just was such a perfect through line, and the animation is just awesome. It really is such a great way to draw you into the story. I just loved it. And I'll admit that too, when I first heard your narration, and I was kind of thrown because I thought it was your dad, because I was, the last I had heard your voice, you were a kid. So I was just like it's really from the last film. It was jarring for me, but awesome. So I got to ask, how does it feel to be that close to a big cat in the wild like that? I mean, how does that just kind of change your whole connection and perception of wildlife and your connection to the natural world. And like, it just seems like it would be an incredibly powerful experience.
Well, for me, I've been like, I don't know how many years, 30 years going with wildlife. So I'm very used to all animals. So this is a wild cat at home, one of the two wilds we have.
That's so funny. My last question for you was going to ask if you had any cats.
With some props.
Aw,
It's mommy.
beautiful, beautiful.
So I'm very used to, since I was his age, almost 18, 20 years, to be close to the animals. With wild cats, there are two cats that they could be dangerous, especially the tiger and the lion. You cannot get close to tigers and lions. The rest of the wild cats, they are not really dangerous. Anyway, you don't want to get very close. And there are very few occasions, maybe 3 or 4, that we are very close. When we are in a boat, when we are near some tigers on a 4-wheel drive, and when we are with a lioness that comes to us, that also we are in a car. With cougars, we were for many, many days, 3 weeks, and one time one family, the mother with the cubs, got close to us. But it wasn't us getting close to the animal. For me, being too close is not important. Sometimes you get this occasion when you have 4 or 5 years, you get maybe 4 or 5 occasions. But so for me, being connected to a wild cat or the wildlife is when you see them doing what they want to do, and they don't think you are there. It's better if they don't see you, and they're just doing their everyday life and with the cubs, or eating, or just doing, or sleeping. Or, that's what for me is more important.
Let them be, and then we come back and torture this little fella.
It's so funny. My cat literally started crying outside my door as soon as you brought it. Like, I could hear him just like, what about me? What about me? That's awesome. So I know that one of your main reasons, I believe, for these expeditions and your work, Andoni, is your concern about the fate of these, the endangered nature of a lot of these animals. And, you talk about that with the numbers of the population of lynx, and, how endangered many of them are. How do you hope that this film and these projects will help that cause?
Well, I think first thing is necessary to get people to know what's the situation. Some places like probably the United States, Spain, Europe, it's easier if there is only 100 lynx. You get people into there, get money, and also most of the people in places like this, they don't live on rabbits or on sheep. So it's kind of easier. But if you go to places in Africa, in Asia, and South America, it's just not possible. I mean, they live on what they have, and if you have a predator that kills your sheep, then you get a problem. So in many places, the population of wildlife, wild cats and other species, is going down. So they need help, because before we in the States or in Spain, we finished with many other animals like wolves. In Western Europe, all the wolves were killed. Most of the wolves were killed. Now we try to recover them. So I think we need to help those countries that they have this rich wildlife, that they also in problems to get enough food to keep their families alive. So that's one thing it's one of the important things we want to show in the film.
That's important to get people to talk about these problems. There's a lot of problems in the world that we seem like we can't do anything about it, from climate change to wars that seem so far away. But if nobody talks about them, they're even further apart of being, from a solution coming to them. But if we start talking about them and spreading consciousness on the topic, it's how we're going to start a change. Of course, just if you watch a movie at your house, you're not changing the world. But if you start talking about it, if you know what's going on in the world, what's going on with the animals,
and then you have also to get people to know that's a treasure. To have these animals. If they disappear forever. So the importance, the value of. Economic value is difficult to give economic value, because maybe it has so much value that is more than that. But it's very important to give the importance and the value of having this the wildlife, and also the ecosystems. There's places that are just, the Amazon. If that disappears, it's like, we as part of the world, we're just losing a very important part.
Okay. So we're running out of time. So just to wrap, the last question, is there anything else, in particular that you'd like audiences to take away from this film? Particularly, we have a lot of students who are watching this as part of our education program. Is there anything, that you'd kind of like to leave them with as far as what else you hope they get from the film?
I think what we were just saying the last few minutes, I think that's one of the most important things. What we were saying.
I think that's like the most important thing. Then also we usually like to talk about the value of nature, especially with young people, because when we see documentaries, BBC documentaries or National Geographic pictures of documentaries, we kind of just fantasize about those amazing places, right? And kind of forget the nature that we have close to us, right? And in California, you have also such an amazing nature, but in almost anywhere in the world, if you just go and walk a bit, or maybe grab a bus, you can find the most incredible landscapes, most incredible nature, because at the end of the day, we are part of nature. And it's not like, maybe, I don't know, riding a bike, there's people that like it, people that don't. No, nature is part of us, and everyone should
it's also
try
important
to cherish.
to get people to know that. And once you enjoy that, I mean, it's fun.
Oh, yeah.
Just observe, just watching, just feeling, just being sitting on a rock and looking, you enjoy it.
And the thing is, you can do that anywhere, and everyone can do it. It's not like, I don't know,
and it's
playing
free
video games that you
and
can't
it's free.
like it or not. No, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's a wonderful thing to discover and to cherish. And yeah, I would like to encourage everyone who's young, especially, to maybe just put the TikTok down for a bit, just go for a walk. You don't need to go to the Himalayas, to India, to Africa. Just go for a walk in your neighborhood. Look at the birds, maybe pet a cat, and have some fun. I guarantee you will love it.
Well, thank you guys so much for this amazing film. It really, I watched it again last night, just, to prepare, but also just because I loved immersing myself in that whole experience. It's so beautiful. And thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's been really fun.
Okay, thank you, and see you soon. Hope you enjoyed.
Yeah. Take care.